Hello and welcome to Craftiosity, where creativity comes to you, with monthly craft kits delivered to your door. This month, you'll create a beautiful, intricate pouch designed with a traditional Japanese embroidery technique. Inside your kit, you'll find your design template, a water erasable pen, needle, sewing pins, set of embroidery threads and your beige-colored fabric. You'll also find your step-by-step photo instructions and a little something for your pinboard. Using your water erasable pen and a ruler, mark out 2 rectangles on your fabric that measure 30 centimeters by 20 centimeters. Then mark out 1 rectangle that measures 30 centimeters by 12 centimeters. Carefully cut out all 3 rectangles. On each of your 3 rectangles, mark a 1 centimeter border from the fabric edge all the way around. The side with the pen marks will be the back of your fabric. Take one of your larger fabric rectangles and mark a line 10 centimeters from one of the short edges. You should have a rectangle inside the lines you have drawn. Then mark a 1 centimeter border inside the 4 lines you have drawn. The inner rectangle should measure 16 centimeters by 7 centimeters. Cut the excess paper from your Sashiko template and check it fits within the rectangle you have drawn. Tape your template in position face down onto the back of your fabric piece. Trace the Sashiko design from the template onto the fabric using your water erasable pen. You may find it easier to hold your fabric up to a well-lit window to help you see the design more clearly. Remove the design template, then use your ruler and pen to neaten up the lines and ensure they all line up. Cut a length of your chosen thread color and separate the thread in half so you have 3 strands. Thread your needle and tie a knot in the opposite end of the thread. Start by stitching the X-shaped parts of the design. You will stitch in one direction at a time, rather than stitching one X at a time. Bring your needle up from the back of your fabric at the start of a row of stitches. Go back down into your fabric at the end of the pen line to create your first stitch. Bring your needle up at the start of the next line, then go back down into the fabric at the end of that line. Don't pull your thread tight as you stitch. Repeat this process following one horizontal line at a time, creating individual stitches using your pen marks as guides. Ensure each stitch is the same size as the previous one. Then choose the next nearest horizontal line and repeat this process. When you run out of thread, simply thread a new piece onto your needle. Once you have stitched all the lines in your first color, swap to your next color. Thread the needle with your chosen second color. This time you will be stitching the part of the design that looks like an asterisk. Stitch in the same way as for the X shapes, but your stitches will be slightly shorter. Stitch in one direction at a time, rather than stitching one asterisk at a time. This will help to ensure your stitches line up, giving your Sashiko a neat and professional finish. Once you have completed your Sashiko stitching, dip your finger into some water and rub over any areas you can see pen lines. They will disappear as the fabric dries. Take your smaller rectangle of fabric. Fold over the fabric along one of the long edges using your 1 centimeter borderline as a guide. Press this fold using an iron, then pin in place. Take a single strand of embroidery thread and stitch along the fold using a running stitch. Starting from one end, come up through your fabric from the back with your needle. Make a small stitch going forward, then insert your needle back through your fabric. Come back up through the fabric again, leaving a small space from the end of the previous stitch. Make a second stitch, going back down into your fabric. Repeat this along the entire fold, then fasten official. Draw vertical lines along the small rectangle using a ruler and your erasable pen. These will divide your big pocket into multiple smaller pockets. You can make your pockets any size you like by varying the spacing between your lines. Next, pin your smaller rectangle onto the back of the unembroidered larger rectangle. The bottom edges and shorter sides of the fabric will line up, and the stitched edge of the smaller rectangle should run horizontally across the center of the larger rectangle. This smaller rectangle will form the pockets inside your pouch. Place a few pins next to the lines for your pockets so that your fabric doesn't move while you are stitching. Stitch along your pocket lines using a single strand of embroidery thread and a running stitch. Your stitches should go through both layers of the fabric, sewing them together to create multiple pockets. Take your two large rectangular pieces and place them together with the fronts facing in. The border lines you previously marked on should be facing out. You will use these as guides to stitch along. Pin all the way around the four edges of your fabric, next to your border lines but not on them. Cut two 15 cm pieces of embroidery thread and tie a knot in the end of each piece. Position one piece halfway down the short fabric edge by the sashiko. The thread should be sandwiched between the fabric pieces with the knot sitting in the seam allowance. Mark a 5 cm gap along the short edge furthest from your sashiko. Ensure you don't stitch over this gap as you will turn your pouch right way out through it. Stitch around all four sides of your fabric pouch using a running stitch, stitching onto your border lines. Trim your seam allowance in half to reduce the bulk inside your pouch. Cut diagonally across each of your four corners, being careful not to cut through your stitching. Turn your pouch right side out through the gap you left, making sure to push your corners out. Fold your pouch as if you are closing it up, ensuring the end with the thread for fastening is on top. Mark the center of the first folded over point with your water erasable pen. It should line up with the position of the first tie when your pouch is folded up. This is where you will add your second tie. Thread your needle with the second piece of thread you cut, tying a knot in the end. Starting from the inside of your pouch, make a single small stitch where you have made your pen mark. Make sure the length of the thread ends up on the outside of the pouch. Stitch the gap closed using a small running stitch. Give your whole pouch a press with an iron to flatten it out and give it a neat finish. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we look forward to welcoming you to the next craft kit project.